Hulk Hogan is one of the most recognizable and infamous wrestlers to ever do it. Out of all the biggest stars in wrestling history, like Stone Cold, John Cena, The Rock, Roman Reigns, Cody Rhodes, all these big guys, Hogan came first, and they all looked up to Hogan. No matter how many controversies he's had, his impact cannot be denied. Out of the first 10 WrestleManias, Hulk Hogan main evented 8 of them. That is nuts to me. Hulk Hogan was one of the biggest stars in the 80s, but not just in WWE, in the whole world. Red and yellow wasn't just with McDonald's. It was synonymous with Hulk Hogan. Once Hogan joined the WWE, then called WWF, it was a perfect match. Vince McMahon would buy the company from his father, and this is where the takeover would run wild. Hulk Hogan showed that he could be a big star, appearing in the legendary Rocky series as Thunderlips. McMahon wanted better for his company, and he wanted to take it to another level. The territory days were coming to an end. Vince would make Hogan his top star, and the rest was history. I always wondered, what did TV look like in the 80s? TV in the 80s was all about bright colors, big hair, and larger-than-life stories. This description perfectly matches Hulk Hogan to a T. This would all lead to Vince McMahon's master plan, and the biggest hit of his lifetime. WrestleMania 1. March 31st, 1985, Vince took a huge risk, and in return, the greatest entertainment event series arguably ever was born. The Super Bowl and WrestleMania for me are 1A and 1B. This show was built on Hulk Hogan's back, and honestly, Hulk Hogan is the first true Mr. WrestleMania. McMahon told his crew that it was make or break, as he invested everything to make the WWE national and to have it shot through closed-circuit television. If this show failed, WWE would have died. All the stars were out. It wasn't just a wrestling event. He made it commercially pleasing, with stars like Mr. T, Muhammad Ali, Liberace, Cyndi Lauper, and more. This was a spectacle. This event was seen by over 1 million viewers on closed-circuit television, and it was a smash hit. In the main event, Hulk Hogan teamed up with his favorite black guy, Mr. T, taking on Rowdy Roddy Piper and Paul Orndorff. This was such a success, and it was off to the races from here. Hulk Hogan would also have his own show on MTV called The Rock and Wrestling Connection. They were doing all the right moves, and it's crazy because they tried to use this exact same formula for Cena, but it was just so outdated. But the reason I say that is because Hulk Hogan was the most requested celebrity of the 1980s from Make-A-Wish. Another reason I say this is because Hulk Hogan dropped an actual album. Hogan would try to make it into the music scene a few times. Even Vince himself, he had a song back in the day. He used all his top draws as like guitarists and drummers. I don't know, bro. It was kind of crazy. But Hogan would kind of somewhat make it in the music scene. I wish I was capping for clicks. But this album was as real as it gets. And I'm going to be honest, this shit had some hits on it. The Hulkster's in the house. I wanna be a Hulkamaniac. He had rap on here. He had soul, pop, everything. The diversity was crazy. I went in thinking this was gonna be the white trash final boss anthems, but I was shocked. But the craziest song on the album gotta be the Hulkster in Heaven. This is the biggest PR stunt in the history of music. He made a cap-ass song about a fake Make-A-Wish kid passing away while he was wrestling at Wembley or something. Who told him to drop this, bro? This gotta be Bob Backlund's fault. And this album would also sell over 300,000 copies as well. At this point, Hulk Hogan was the WWE champion, and he held onto this thing for 1,474 days. That is nuts. But let's cover his WrestleMania main events. At WrestleMania 2, Hulk Hogan would face King Kong Bundy in a steel cage match where Hogan would defeat him and retain. But one thing I'll really give Hogan credit for is how he carried so many people to huge matches. Like, people were mainly watching for Hulk. He could fight literally anybody, and it would have been a hit. This Mania would earn about $5 million, making Mania another success. But let's go to WrestleMania 3, arguably the most important WrestleMania of all time. Hulk Hogan would face Andre the Giant, a walking monument and attraction in the main event of WrestleMania. And arguably, the biggest and most known moment in wrestling history would be born as Hogan would hoist up Andre with the body slam heard around the world. Hulk Hogan's dedication to winning a match has to be studied. I don't think I've ever seen him lose. But even when Hogan wouldn't be billed in the main event, he'd still be involved. Like at WrestleMania 4, when the Macho Man took on Ted DiBiase, Hogan got involved and helped the Macho Man win. This was the height of the Mega Powers. The two best wrestlers on the same side, they probably had all the ladies going wild. I have to mention this real quick. Hogan would face Andre at the main event show, and the ways Hogan lost would be so hokey, I don't even think they count. Like, bro, Andre went for the pin, Hogan kicked out at 1, and the ref just face down, ignored it, and counted to 3. What type of screw job is this? 33 million people tuned in to see the screw job of a lifetime. This was nuts. But let's go to WrestleMania 5. At this point, Hogan had been carrying the WWF with this feud with Macho Man, but I gotta be real, I don't think this feud ever actually ended. The reason I say that is because Hogan wasn't the only one to dabble into music. Macho Man dropped a whole ass Hogan diss track and had 50 Cent with him. This track is legendary. He sounded just like DMX. But Macho seemed like a cool ass dude, and to me, Hogan seems like a guy that would do anything to keep himself at the top and sliming anyone out in the process. But Hogan would beat Macho at Mania 5 for the WWF Championship. Everybody loves a good dramatic love story, as Miss Elizabeth was a really perfect link to Macho's character, and this pay-per-view was very successful, making $1.6 million in advance ticket sales. This shows that when you give Hogan a good opponent, it's going to automatically be a success. But the thing I really want to show was how big Hogan actually was. He was wrestling's first megastar, and he not only did this by being the top wrestler, but going outside the wrestling world to build himself to the absolute best of his ability. For most people, it's both. It's about what you can do inside of the ring, but also outside of the wrestling ring. It's a blueprint that is still used to this day. But in 1989, Hogan would be in a movie called No Holds Barred, and this movie wasn't all that, but still, most publicity is good publicity. But Hogan was everywhere, even in movies like Gremlins 2, an iconic franchise, or just being a funny gag in Beavis and Butthead. Hogan is known by everyone. No matter how many times his name pops up in bad ways, I just can't help but respect the guy. He put his body through absolute hell for the sake of the company, but honestly, who's to say that he doesn't have CTE or something? But the thing that breaks my heart is how he doesn't have to lie. Like, he probably has the craziest stories regardless. I don't know why he has to lie all the time, but anyways though, back to the pit. Let's go to WrestleMania 6. The Ultimate Warrior was a perfect character for the WWF, as he had a lot of the charisma like Hogan, and he had the bright colors and the big long hair. But the two would face off for all the marbles, as both the world title and the IC titles were on the line. 67,678 people packed the Sky Dome, and the visual was insane. This felt like the biggest clash of the decade. This match birthed the most AO moment in WWE history, but nonetheless, Warrior would actually beat Hogan, giving Hogan his first clean loss since 1981. That stat is nuts. But Hogan would win back-to-back Rumbles in 1990 and 1991, and at WrestleMania 7, it would be a very controversial event because of the Gulf War, as Sergeant Slaughter would turn heel on the US, and who other than Hulk Hogan to save the day and defeat Slaughter for his third WWF title. Hulk Hogan at this point was winding down in his WWF career, as it would get worse after Mania 8. After he defeated Psycho Sid, the WWF would be in deep trouble. This was Hulk Hogan's first big blemish, the steroid scandal. In 1993, Vince was charged basically of hiring a shady doctor and giving roids to his talent. This was obvious at first glance to see 95% of these guys were on roids. This changed the company's views that if this didn't happen, Bret Hart and Shawn Michaels would have never had the spotlight, and many other smaller guys after them. The worst part was, Hogan's PR was tanking, and at WrestleMania 9, they had the worst Mania finish of all time, as he completely took the shine away from Bret and randomly came in and beat Yokozuna for the title. Hogan looked significantly smaller, as well as showing that he blatantly lied about being on roids. This steroid trial could have gotten Vince packed up as well, and this guy ended up testifying against Vince. What? Like, rule number 1, never be friends with Hulk Hogan. But Hulk Hogan ended up leaving WWE in 1993 because he couldn't get over, brother. This is the sorriest shit I've ever heard. The biggest wrestler of the past 10 years was dipping because he couldn't get over. Nah, man, I low-key feel bad for Vince. All of his top guys leave him. He would eventually go to a company where he could get over at. WCW. I don't know much about Hogan's time in WCW, but I know this guy spearheaded 2 boom periods in wrestling, and that is unheard of. He went from the biggest face of all time to the biggest heel in wrestling. This doesn't get enough credit on how Hogan pulled this off. His run with Hulkamania was iconic, but his run with the NWO matched it, and you could say that it was even better. Hogan's career had so many ups and downs, and he's low-key a company killer. But the WCW was on a steady decline, and after Vince Russo cut the craziest shoe promo of all time on Hogan's head top, Hogan's time was done with WCW. This promo was kind of hilarious, I'm gonna be honest. He was not going for Hogan's shit at all. But there's not many wrestlers that have anything good to say about Hogan. Or, for that matter, any wrestling fan under the age of like 57. But you know what, bro? There's a time and a place for everything. There's so many videos on Hulk Hogan being a liar or being in some type of drama that it's affected the actual truth and how big he was. Numbers don't lie. They don't tell the whole story, but they don't lie. Hogan is still on the Mount Rushmore of wrestling regardless of whatever bullshit backstage moment in the 70s he lies about. And the WWE crowd missed Hogan. During the invasion in 2001, many big names were missing, but the biggest was Hogan. The fans missed him dearly, and that would show as in 2002, Hogan's pops would be nuts. They had no choice but to turn him face. This would be blatantly obvious when he went on to face The Rock at Wrestlemania 18. Two of the all-time greats were one of the craziest crowd reactions for a match I've ever seen in my life. This is where Hogan would turn face for the first time since 1996. This wasn't just a one-night thing. The Raw after Mania, Hogan would get a standing ovation for over 10 minutes straight. This is looked at as one of the most iconic crowd reactions ever back-to-back. Hulk Hogan was somehow in another prime. Another segment that adds to the sentiment is when Hogan returned to the iconic red and yellow. The look on Triple H's face said it all. The hype was so real with Hogan that they would reward him with the world title. A lot of nostalgia runs end up with the world title reigns, but we were seeing it right now with Cena, but this was the first. But let's go to WrestleMania 19. Hogan would enter a feud with the boss himself, Mr. McMahon. This gotta be the most down bad uncle feud I've ever seen, but it was so damn entertaining. You got two of the craziest carnival crooks at the grandest stage of them all. They addressed everything. The scandal, WCW, the NWO, everything. For their contract signing, Vince literally snuck them and slimed them out by using his own blood to sign the contract. This is some MGK shit. They might have gone too far with this. Vince and Hogan would have a bloody war which somehow involved Vince hitting a leg drop off of a ladder and a Spanish announcer getting hit with a chair. This was definitely a big ball of sports entertainment, and Hogan would win. Hogan's career would be on the decline after this, with his last contribution inspiring a guy called Mr. America. Yeah, it's crazy, right? But this was the last we'd hear from Hogan until 2005. Hogan would actually be inducted into the Hall of Fame in 2005, and we'd have something left in the tank with Hogan. He'd start a show called Hogan Knows Best, and this show gave us some iconic moments. Hogan might be valid now. He ran back Jeezy's I Love It 3 times just to get the lyrics down. Run that shit back, brother. Hogan also rapped Juicy by Biggie and then flashed his nuts for some reason. This guy is insane. But somehow, this stuff wasn't the craziest shit we'd get this year. We'd get Shawn Michaels versus Hulk Hogan at SummerSlam 2005 in a pure wrestling classic. Yeah, if Shawn did all this after he turned to God, you gotta be the problem. But honestly, that was the last we'd get of Hogan in WWE. He'd leave to TNA to run that company, and that's a whole nother video for a whole different day. But in 2014, Hogan will be blackballed for saying racist comments, and that's been talked about to death, so I'm just gonna leave that there. The thing about Hogan, though, is that everybody would still love him probably if he didn't do so much unnecessary lying and get into drama. It's like the kayfabe life took over his entire outlook and his worldviews to the point where he doesn't ever know what's really real from fake. He probably has so many great stories, but he gets on these podcasts like Impulsive and Joe Rogan and says the most outlandish and unbelievable things I've ever seen in my life. It's getting really hard to be a Hulkamaniac, brothers. Like, there's hour-long videos of Hulk Hogan blatantly lying, and this gets to a point wherever he makes a return now, he gets booed out of the building. Or like when CM Punk gave him the biggest stray, saying he tossed his old ass over the top rope if he had to. It's just sad of what it's come to. But we could all reminisce on the legendary career he's had and separate the art from the artist and be a closet Hulkamaniac all you want. But now, the question is, are you guys still a fan of the Hulkster? But either way, the numbers don't lie. Hulk Hogan led an entire company on his back and is on the Mount Rushmore for WWE. But subscribe, join the ride, and I'm out, man. Peace.